here in the SEC. So let's get right into it. And we all know Nick Saban down there in Tuscaloosa loves to give him them ass chewings. Lane Kiffin sure knows what we're talking about, and so does one Pete Golding. Here's the Alabama defensive coordinator when asked, are these ass chewings, have they slowed down at all this year?
Hi, Pete. Thanks for the time. My question, I'd heard from a couple people around the program that Nick Saban has dispensed fewer of the proverbial ass chewings this year. I'm wondering if that's accurate.
Absolutely not accurate. No, no. I mean, I think obviously whatever you do here, coach is going to make sure that you do it to the best of your ability and you do it the way, he sees fit, which I enjoy. I think that's the thing as a player, as a coach. I think you always want to know what can I do better? How can I improve? And I think a lot of times, whoever you work for, whatever profession you're in, sometimes you don't get that. You don't get the feedback back and you don't know. So I think the good thing about him is black and white and you're going to know.
Well, it was, Nick Saban's been very clear. He's been easier on this team, a younger team, not as many veterans on this Alabama football team. But that does not mean that the staff is not getting the wrath of one Nicholas Saban down there in Tuscaloosa. So as soon as I heard this, I had to start with that clip because, hey, Pete Golden says he enjoys them. So there you go. He's the opposite of Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin certainly didn't look like he ever appreciated those. But, hey, all jokes aside, we're going into this national championship game. Alabama, Georgia, once again facing 2 out of 3 games. Pretty remarkable situation that we've got here heading into Monday night's game in Indianapolis. And that is a theme all these coordinators were asked about. It's kind of a NFL-like atmosphere here when you got division foes that sometimes turn around and play each other, twice in a month, something like that. And, I hadn't thought about it quite like this until recently, but we got Todd Monken, of course, with his experience with the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Cleveland Browns. We got Bill O'Brien, New England Patriots, Houston Texans. These offensive coordinators are in a unique position that, they've live life in the NFL. Nick Saban, too. Kirby Smart. I can't remember if Kirby Smart's got a year in the NFL or not. But, more of these offensive guys is who I'm really looking at because they've done it much more recently. And I don't know if either of these defensive coordinators, I know Dan Lanning, he doesn't have any NFL experience. I don't believe Pete Golding does either. So, I'm not saying that, this is going to be the difference in the ballgame or anything, but would not be surprised if these offensive staffs maybe just pick something, little tidbits up here and there, life in the NFL. And so that's something Pete Golding kind of hits at here. We've only got a week to prepare for this one. It's much different than the semifinal where you get to scheme up for a month to get ready for a college football playoff game. So let's kick it over once again to Pete Golding, the Alabama defensive coordinator on, they had so much success against Stetson Bennett. Hell, they've had success against him twice. And part of that is mixing it up. What the Bennett's going to see at the line of scrimmage, that is something that Pete Golding discussed here.
Nick Saban had said after the last Georgia game that part of the success against Stetson Bennett was kind of changing the picture on him. Just what's the challenge of having to do that twice now and having a quarterback who's already seen your defense and having to call plays for another 60 minutes against them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's tough having to play somebody twice. I mean, I know everybody talks about that and all that, but I mean, if you look at the NFL, I mean, you're playing everybody in your division twice. I mean, I think the big thing is in any quarterback, what they see is not what they need to get every snap. And I think you're trying to make him make the decision of what coverage it is, what front is it, what pressure it is once he's got the ball in his hands. So I think the key is, in a pre-snap read, he thinks he's getting this look and then the ball turns over and now it's a different coverage or it's a different pressure or it's a different front. And then now he's got to think. I think, there's no difference in disguises to me on defense from the front, the coverage and all that, than like on offense with motions and shifts and trades. They don't put in new plays every week. They're just getting to them differently. It's a different formation. It's a different shift. They're putting a guy in a different spot. So they're tweaking things, but it's still what they do. It's their bread and butter. So I think, defensively, it's like, how can you keep things the same, but make them look different? And that way your guys have carryover. They understand the rules, so if they see something new, they can let the rules apply. So, yeah, absolutely. It's playing the game, making him think. They got a lot of weapons at a lot of different spots that create some matchup issues. They're going to move this tight end around and try to, create the matchups they want with him. They got really good backs that are issue covering out of the backfield. So you got to pick your poison sometime. You're not going to be able to get everybody you want doubled or the person you want on them based on the formation they're in. So, our guys are going to have to cover well and play well.
This goes back to something I said on a recent show. It's not like these guys are going to be able to reinvent the wheel heading into this national championship game. They kind of are who they are. I really think it's going to come down to execution on the field, as coach speak as that is to say. But what can Alabama throw at Georgia that they didn't see, and vice versa? When we're talking about two programs that have played each other 2 consecutive seasons here with a lot of the same players on both sides of the ball. I know, there's been turnover at Alabama a little bit more than on the Georgia football team. But, hey, it's going to come down to these subtle differences that these coaches, and we'll get to Bill O'Brien, Dan Lanning here in a moment, because clearly, they were asked a couple of questions here. They were keeping things close to the vest. So it's not like there's going to be no adjustments, but I just don't think there's going to be any radical adjustments made in this football game. Alabama, Georgia, we know who they are. We know who the star players are, and we know who the complementary players all across the board. So that is something that Bill O'Brien, like I said, he talked about here on his Wednesday media availability and his history scheming up for these rematch type ball games.
Just as a general rule of thumb with a rematch, I mean, you had a lot of experience with those in the NFL. Where do you start from scratch? Do you start from where the last game left off? How do you deal with all that information that you got from the last game?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I think you have to do a little bit of both. You have to go back to the drawing board, so to speak. You got to start from scratch. You have to look at the last game. You got to go back and review the whole season, your season, their season. It's a long week. They have a great defense, almost like a generational defense. They have amazing stats, and they play hard. They play good. They got a lot of great players, great coaches on that side of the ball. And so it's going to be a challenge for us.
And of course, one of the key difference makers here in the SEC championship game, Alabama does not win that football game without Jameson Williams. Now, he had John Mechie to kind of help him out there in the first half of that ball game. And then Jameson Williams, even to open the third quarter, scored a big touchdown. That was kind of the dagger for the Georgia Bulldogs first time around. That's going to be critical, getting the ball in Jameson Williams' hand. It certainly looked like in the semifinal, he kind of shifted his role a little bit, was a little less of the deep threat option. I think Alabama knew, they really didn't have to use that deep ball. Ground and pound against Cincinnati, not going to be able to do that against the Georgia Bulldogs, considering how dominant they are on the front seven there. But we all know, if you can call it a weakness, it's that secondary for the Georgia Bulldogs. They have got to get Jameson Williams going. Bill O'Brien was asked about it. Again, keeping things pretty close to the vest here.
Yes, Bill, you've been around some tremendous receivers in the career you mentioned. What makes Jameson special, and are there qualities from guys like Hopkins and some others that, are there any similarities with him to some of the great receivers you've coached in your time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've coached a ton of great receivers. And Jameson, relative to the stage of the career that he's at, being a college player right now and having a chance probably to play pro football, he has got great speed. He's an excellent route runner, and he's a very competitive guy. He's a very instinctive player. He's a very smart player. And I can't say enough about his competitiveness. He's a player that goes out and practices every day like it's a game. And so I think that's something that the great ones have, those traits. Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody's built differently. Everybody has different, skill sets, different speed, things like that. But the best ones that I've been around, and Jameson's in that category, They all have that competitive spirit that's really hard to find sometimes.
And then one other item, we talked about it on the last episode with Jim Harbaugh potentially jumping to the NFL. One name that is popping up. It's wild how these coaching searches go. I mean, Jim Harbaugh's still at Michigan, yet, hey, we got a hot list here of guys that may be replacing him if he does jump to the NFL. And that number one name, Bill O'Brien. So, could Bill O'Brien be leaving for the Michigan job? Could he be leaving for another NFL job? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But I do think he's in a unique position where he's been on Super Bowl teams. He's been in the NFL. It's a business. And for Bill O'Brien, it's a business. He's asked about these other job opportunities and if that's a distraction at all this week. Considering he's done this before, I don't think it will be. And that's kind of what he has to say here on Wednesday.
Bill, just what's been your approach in your process if your name has come up these past couple of weeks for other college jobs, your NFL jobs, just deciding whether there's mutual interest in your part?
That it's one of those things that happens all the time. It's part of the career, part of what you sign up for. I don't, my focus has always been on the task at hand, and that's just the way I operate. I just think that this is a great opportunity for this program, and we've put so much work into this that, and really, like, if you're here, if you're able to follow us around for a week, that your focus is completely on Georgia and your team and what you have to do to try to do your part to help your team win. So that's what the focus is.